The Braves have the ace they've been searching for years now in Max Fried. What change did he make to earn him that title of ace? And should the Atlanta Braves already be looking to give him an extension, even though he has plenty of years left of team control? I'll give you my thoughts as well as your thoughts on this episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
Hey, this is Stacey Gotsoulias,
DC Lundberg,
Ryan Finkelstein,
Taylor Blake Ward,
host of Locked On Yankees,
Locked On Mariners,
Locked On Mets,
Locked On Angels,
and you're listening to Locked On Braves.
Locked On Braves,
Locked On Braves,
part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, where we are talking about your favorite teams every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShortstopBall. Check out my bio there to see everywhere I am covering the game of baseball, including the Atlanta Braves in written form over at TomahawkTake.com. Also, please make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. Send me in all your questions, comments, feedback for the podcast, as we like to make this an interactive show here at Locked On Braves. And also make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube as well. Appreciate all the comments on the videos there. The likes really does help out the channel, so I appreciate that as well. So make sure you're following us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube. And as always, thanks for making Locked On Braves your first listen each and every day. Right now, during the offseason, posting episodes 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So if you're getting tough times during the lockout, still got coverage coming for you at least 3 days a week. Plenty of Braves content still rolling out your way to help get us through this lockout together. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Max Fried, and I went back and watched the World Series special that Fox Sports put together, the little 2-hour video collage that they put together on the World Series, and having it feeling all those emotions again, and just some moments that I already forgot about, but just some huge moments like Austin Riley's play at third base in Game 4 that saved a run, such a huge moment that I don't think gets talked about a lot, but still one of my favorite moments, obviously, is Game 6 and Max Fried getting stepped on in that first inning, and then just that bulldog mentality after that, the way that he fought back, got out of that inning, didn't give up anything. And then, as Dansby Swanson says in that documentary on FS1, it was over. I mean, he didn't give the Astros a chance after that. And obviously Soler did what he did, and the offense went to work. But I just love that from Max Fried. And, you know, if it wasn't already established, and I think it was, Max Fried is the ace of the Atlanta Braves. You know, coming into 2020, there was discussions, was it going to be Soroka? Was it going to be Max Fried? You know, at that time, it like maybe Soroka was going to be the ace of the future. It is definitely Max Fried at this point. And again, he proved that in 2020, which I think if he would have stayed healthy all that shortened 2020 season, you know, if he hadn't missed those 2 or 3 starts, he may have won the Cy Young. I really thought he should have got more consideration in 2021 as well. But Max Fried is an ace. He is the top of the rotation type pitcher, a type of pitcher the Braves have been looking for, honestly, for a long time. And they now have that in Max Fried. I believe he is a bona fide ace. I believe he is a true number 1 starter. I think his numbers the last 2 years have proven that. So I wanted to take a look back at Max Fried, his progression, what has turned him into an ace, and then also wanted to talk about him as a possible extension candidate this offseason, maybe next offseason as well. Sent out a question on Twitter Tuesday, which was Max Fried's birthday, which kind of brought up this discussion as well that I wanted to talk about. But sent out a question on Twitter asking you if the Braves should extend Max Fried. So I will include your thoughts as well in this episode. But let's talk about Max Fried and the progression, because when you talk about the rebuild and the Braves getting to a World Series championship, you could really say that a lot of it started with Max Fried. He was the first big piece in that rebuild. He was the big part of the package that the Padres sent to the Atlanta Braves when the Braves traded over Justin Upton. And I know there were some other pieces involved in that trade, but that was primarily what it was, Justin Upton for Max Fried, who was the 7th overall pick in 2012 by the Padres. And He ended up having Tommy John surgery after the 2014 season, missed all of 2015, which is when the trade actually took place. The Braves traded for him while he was rehabbing from Tommy John surgery, believing in the stuff. He debuted in 2017 with the Braves, mostly as a reliever, did pretty much the same in 2018 before becoming a full-time starter in 2019. And that's why it feels like Max Fried has been around for a long time, and he has, but yet because of, control and all of that, he still has 3 years of arbitration left, which we'll talk about a little bit more if the current CBA holds. But he was a dark horse Cy Young candidate to start the 2020 season. I can remember writing about it myself. A lot of other people are on that hype train as well going into 2020 about Max Fried having a breakout season. Like I said, he did finish 5th in the NL Cy Young voting, and I think he would have finished higher than that, if not won it, had he not missed those 2 or 3 starts there. So definitely had a breakout 2020, built on that in 2021 with another brilliant season and a brilliant start in Game 6 of the World Series after a couple of shaky outings in the postseason. But again, that Game 6, all that happened in that first inning, I mean, he really turned in even more so to that ace for the Braves than he already was. Like I said, I think he already had that. It's official now. He is the ace of the Braves. He is their number one for the next several years here. So I want to talk about what changed with Max Fried, though. And I wrote an article about this over at tomahawktake.com. If you want to go check that out, there'll be more detail, obviously, there in written form. But I kind of just wanted to briefly highlight the changes that have made him an ace before we talk about whether or not he is a good extension candidate. In 2019 is when it all really started. And like I said, a lot of people projected in 2020 for him to break out. And this is part of that reason, because in 2019, he started throwing a slider. He hadn't really been throwing that before. Again, as a reliever, you don't really show, as many pitches as you would as a starter. 2019 became a full-time starter, but he started implementing that slider. And he was still throwing his fastball, his four-seam fastball, over 50% of the time, which is a pretty high usage, especially, in Max Fried's fastball on its own, while very good in the 93, 94 mile per hour range. I know he can get it up a little higher at times, is not necessarily what I would consider an elite fastball. It's his great curveball that obviously makes it so effective. And in 2020, after he started throwing the slider more in 19, you saw his fastball usage went down to 41%, with his slider usage going up to 20%. And his curveball usage has always kind of been around 25, 26%. Like I said, that curveball is elite. It is one of the best in all of baseball, comparable to Clayton Kershaw's curveball from the left side. But what that slider did and what made it so key for him is that then gave him 3 pitches in 3 different velocity ranges, which I think is very key. He has a four-seamer that, again, he can throw in the mid-90s. Now he has that slider, which he throws in the mid-80s, and then that curveball in the mid-70s. That is really difficult for hitters to pick up when you have 3 pitches coming at you, one that's straight, one that's diving in, down and in on righties, one that's diving more down vertically and in to righties as well, and all in 3 different velocity ranges. So that makes it very tough. And a lot of pitchers can throw 3 pitches. He's able to command them all, and they all have very good break on it. That's why a lot of people saw the breakout coming. That's why he's become such a good pitcher, and I believe is one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. Not to mention, he also will throw a sinker about 10% of the time, which gives him some movement coming in to lefties. So it's the one pitch he has that has some run back into lefties. His other pitches more so will be going into righties. So that sinker is important as well, but it was more so when he started incorporating that slider is when you really saw him make that adjustment as a starting pitcher and become a top pitcher in all of baseball. So that's a little bit of detail what I talked about in my article on tomahawktake.com. That's why I think he is such a great pitcher now and think he will be for years to come. So with that in mind, I want to talk about whether or not the Atlanta Braves should extend Max Fried. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. Yours is about getting fit or eating healthier. Make sure you include a Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good you will want to eat these. Unlike the other protein bars out there, you know what they are. They can taste chalky or waxy or some of them even as bad as a chemical spill. you want to eat healthy, but it gets so boring. By now, you probably might be thinking, where is the chocolate? The Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Most Built Bars contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 net carbs. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. So here's a suggestion for you. Go to all your secret stashes where you keep your candy during the workday. Replace all that bad candy with a Built Bar, which tastes great and are great for you as well. Get some of my favorite flavors. Try the cookies and cream, the peanut butter brownie, salted caramel, some of my favorites. Very good. Go to built.com right now. Use our promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, that's LOCKED15 at built.com for 15% off your order. All right, so I laid the groundwork for Max Fried is the pitcher. Why I think he's an ace, why I think he's a true number one, and I believe he will be for years to come. So again, the Braves have been searching for that pitcher for years. I think maybe they thought they had it in Julio Teheran a while back, but they haven't truly had an ace pitcher in a long time. Maybe since Tim Hudson. It's been quite a while. And, that's after the 90s where you had 3 ace pitchers. But now they have that in Max Fried, somebody that I believe can compete for Cy Young awards. He's under team control for 3 more years through arbitration. Like I talked about earlier, it wasn't necessarily service time manipulation. I think the Braves maybe even brought Max Fried up a little too soon, but just with the way it worked out in his first couple of years, he is still under control for 3 more seasons, even though he just turned 28 years old on January 18th. Again, that could change in this upcoming CBA negotiation where they're trying to reduce the number of arbitration years and get players to free agency sooner. So very well, Max Fried could benefit from this upcoming CBA, and it could be to the Braves' detriment if they no longer under control for 3 more years. But as things stand right now in the current CBA or the current collective bargaining agreement, he is under control for 3 more years under arbitration. He's projected to make around $7 million in 2022. Then likely that'll get bumped to $11 million in 23, and then maybe around $14 million in 2024, assuming he continues to pitch the way that he has. Again, just turned 28 on the 18th of January. So coming into his prime now, the Braves essentially have him locked up through the middle of his prime as things are right now, if nothing changes. You look at his career numbers, he's 40-18. That's a .690 win percentage. I know people don't care about wins anymore, but when he goes out there, the Braves typically win. He has a 3.34 ERA in 447 innings with 447 strikeouts exactly and a 1.230 whip. Now, you just look at the last 2 years, the 2020 and 2021 seasons, he's 21-7 in 39 starts, 221 innings and 2/3, 221 and 2/3 innings, 208 strikeouts. So a K/9 under 9, which is a bit unusual for, a dominant ace pitcher, but still obviously very good. But what's become most impressive, his whip the last 2 years, which is a stat that I really love for pitchers because it tells you how many base runners the pitcher is allowing, which is obviously very important to limiting runs. His whip the last 2 years is 1.087. Again, you compare that to his career number, which is 1.230, and that's just incredible. And I think part of that is because of the introduction of that slider. It has kept hitters off of his other pitches, like the fastball, like the curveball, which has helped his BABIP get better. Again, in the article, I talk about his BABIP in the first 3 years was like 330 or something like that. In the last 2 years, it's been more around 270. I think that's because he does a better job now of keeping hitters off balance because of those other pitches like the slider, like the sinker. So I think there is a reason for that. I do not believe that is a fluke by any means. I believe there is a very obvious reason you can point to for that added success the last 2 years. Now, the one thing about Fried, and I'm going to get to reasons why not to here in a second, but he does seem to get injured at times, which, all pitchers do, knock on wood. Usually it's a blister or something minor. He threw 169 and 2/3 innings in 2019. This past year, 2021, the most innings he's ever thrown, when you include the postseason, he threw 192.4 innings. And again, that's including the postseason. And the regular season, I think it was around 165.2 innings. So, he hasn't thrown a ton of regular season innings. You'd probably would like to see that more around the 175, 180 range for today's game for starters. So we've yet to see him really become kind of that workhorse over the entire season. But obviously 2021, a big year for him, a huge jump in innings. That's almost 30 innings more than what his previous high was in 2019. Obviously 2020, the shortened season, everybody was coming off a short innings limit, but by far 2021, the most innings we've ever seen him throw. So I'll be curious to see how he bounces back from that in 2022. And that was really one of my, I wouldn't call it a major concern, but reasons why not to do the extension for Max Fried is because he hasn't proven he can throw a lot of innings over the regular season. And he does seem to have some injury concerns, obviously, a Tommy John surgery in his past. Then he seems to struggle with the blisters and just some minor things from time to time that would worry you a little bit when talking about extensions. And probably the biggest reason not to is just that there's no rush when you have 3 years of control. Again, if this changes in the CBA, then maybe that speeds things up a little bit. But when you have 3 years of control over a pitcher who just turned 28, there's just really no rush by the team to do something right now. But if you look at some comparisons, which I looked at some out there, obviously in preparation for the show, Lance McCullers signed a 5-year extension with the Astros for $85 million, and that paid him through his age 28 through 32 seasons. I certainly would love to see something like that happen. I think that's a very team-friendly deal for a pretty comparable pitcher in Lance McCullers, who has been very good when healthy, but he's been injured at times and missed good chunks of time over the last several seasons. But 5 years, $85 million for Lance McCullers. I would do that in a heartbeat for Max Fried. I think what Max Fried probably would want is something closer to what Jose Barrios got in 7 years and $131 million from the Blue Jays for his age 28 through 34 seasons. That to me is a little bit more riskier anytime you are giving that many years to a starting pitcher. But those are two of the comparable contract extensions out there right now. Barrios was buying out, I think, one arbitration year. I don't think McCullers was buying out any arbitration years in that because that deal doesn't start till 2022. So a little bit of the differences there, but I think both of those are pretty comparable extensions to what Max Fried could want. I think anywhere from 15 to 17 million a year is probably pretty fair for Max Fried. Again, we're talking the next 3 years will be arbitration years. So perhaps, the Braves get a smaller deal during those first 3 years. Don't pay as much during those first 3 years for arbitration. But in his free agent years, I could see 15 to 17 million being a fair price for Max Fried. You put that all together, I think a 6-year offer at around 90 million would be very fair for Max Fried. I don't know if he would take that. Again, as a starting pitcher, it'd be hard to turn that down, knowing just how injury prone starting pitchers or pitchers in general can be. And that's obviously big money. But if I'm the Braves and now we're trying to do this extension right now, I would probably do 6 years, 90 million. But again, I don't think the Braves have to do that right now. And looking at your responses on Twitter, I just give you some real quickly. Jake Winfrey, Jake, says sign him for infinity. So Jake is all on board for signing up Max Fried, extending him. Jeffrey Harper says definitely. I'm not good at guessing numbers, but something like 12 million a year would be a bit of a steal if we can get it, giving the potential future value. And certainly if you can get Max Fried at 12 million a year for 5-6 years, you do that in a heartbeat. I think it's going to cost you a little bit more than that. Again, and that's because his next 3 years are arbitration years. So maybe you do overall get it for around 12 million a year annually. But I think for those last 3 years, those free agent years, I think he warrants 16, 17 million a year. Steve Lamb says, I would extend him, but like with Dansby, I would wait till after the offseason, which I think is a good play there. And then VT Murdoch says, I extend him. But okay, so he's sorry, I got the tweets mixed up here. VT Murdoch said I would extend him as well. So and then finally had one from Jacob Suttles to give kind of a different take on it. Jacob says, I would not extend him unless it was extremely team friendly. I don't believe in hanging out many extensions to pitchers. And I definitely understand that notion. That's probably where I am right now. Sorry, I want to go back to VT Murdoch. So I got him and Steve's mixed up. Steve said he would extend him, but wait till after the season. VT Murdoch said 15 million seems fine. I would wait until he turns 30, 12 to 15 million for 2 to 3 more years. That's about where I am too, VT. I think that's probably a little bit low, but where VTR and Steve and Jacob, I think that's kind of where I'm as well. There's no reason to rush this right now. You can wait another year, maybe even another 2 years before you really start to enter extension talks with Max Fried again, unless the CBA changes things. And if that happens, then who knows what will take place. There'll be a lot of ramifications from that. But I'm kind of on board with where a lot of you are. I would do it for around, the 15, 16 million a year mark for 5 or 6 years. But I'm also okay with waiting a couple of years before we actually enter in those discussions and look to get a deal done. So I appreciate the responses there. We're going to take one more break and come back and answer one of your questions about the rest of the competition in the NL East. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile website. So sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use our promo code Locked On. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we got another question here I wanted to get to. This one comes from VT Murdoch. He says, what is your evaluation or grade for the Mets and Phillies offseason moves? So I don't know that I've touched on this a lot on the podcast, but I just want to quickly go through it. The Mets, obviously, they are the winners of the offseason so far. Went out and signed Max Scherzer, Starling Marte, Mark Canha, and Eduardo Escobar. Look, I love these moves. I'm not going to lie to you. The Scherzer one is scary for sure, but if he's healthy and Jacob deGrom are healthy, Carlos Carrasco is healthy, this is a very good lineup. You got Taijuan Walker in there as well. That's a very good starting rotation. Maybe the best in all of baseball, except for maybe the Milwaukee Brewers. That is dangerous, but those are also some big question marks injury-wise. And I know starting pitchers are a question mark injury-wise themselves, but with where DeGrom is in his career and Scherzer is in his career, that would scare me a lot, especially you got a lot of money tied up in those guys. But if healthy, there's no question about it. That is a very good starting rotation. I love the Marte signing. I've wanted the Braves to get Starling Marte for years. Obviously, he's a little bit older now. So is Eduardo Escobar. Those are still very good veteran bats. Mark Canha as well. I mean, those are all very solid additions. I can't sugarcoat it. Those are good additions for the Mets, and it's going to make them a better team. They have a very solid lineup and rotation. I think the biggest question mark for them is, can those starters stay healthy? Can they be healthy enough over the course of the season to win the division? Can they be healthy enough come postseason time to win in the postseason if they get there? But I do like the lineup. I think it's a very good team. I think it's obviously going to be the biggest competition for the Braves right now. As far as the Phillies go, what moves have they made? Maybe I'm missing something here, but they signed Johan Camargo. Watch him hit a walk-off homer against the Braves. You can lock that in. They still signed Corey Knebel, which is a good move. They need to be making moves for that bullpen, but they need help in center field, left field, probably shortstop as well. There's questions in that rotation behind Walker and Nola was up and down himself last year. And there's always questions in that bullpen. I mean, I'm honestly not scared of the Phillies right now. again, they make a couple additions to the lineup. I think that lineup could be good. I still think they still need another starting pitcher or two. So I'm not really worried about the Phillies right now. Obviously, there's more offseason to get to at some point, but I do like the Mets moves. I think they are going to be a very good team. Again, health is going to be a very big question mark for them, as it has been for years now for the Mets, but they are definitely the team to watch against the Braves in the NL East this year. They'll probably be favored, and that's fine. But I do like the Mets moves, what they've done so far. Phillies don't really concern me at this point. But good question, VT Murdoch. I can't wait to get into more of those questions talking about the 2022 season and what to look forward to. So I do appreciate sending in that question. Please continue to send in all your questions. I'll make sure to get them answered on the show. Not just VT, other people can send in questions as well, and I'll make sure to get to those on the podcast. But that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves, where you can send me in those questions. Make sure that you follow me at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast, wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.